ways on roads and alleys and any of this. There's a
No, 2014. If you would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing again. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Later down. Father, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for the crowd that is here, and we ask that you be with those who cannot attend. We also ask that we have open minds as we enter this meeting and try to conduct the city's business. All these things we pray. Amen.
I'd like to welcome everyone here to the second meeting of the new year. We have proclamation. First item on our agenda is a proclamation that we've been asked to provide, and it is a proclamation basically declaring February the 21st, 2014 as Arbor Day, and I will quickly read that proclamation. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas city trees add the soft touch of nature to our busy lives, they cool our cities, fight pollution, conserve energy, give wildlife a home, and make our neighborhoods more livable. And whereas the trees on city property along streets and parks are an essential part of the urban forest. To keep these trees healthy and abundant, our city organized a program for their care. We have an annual action plan to plant and prune the city's trees and to maintain their health. And whereas trees are a source of joy and spiritual renewal, and whereas the city of Canton has been recognized as Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation and desires to continue its tree planting ways. Now therefore be it resolved, I, Gene Hopgood, Mayor of the City of Canton, do hereby proclaim Friday, February 21st, 2014 as Arbor Day in the City of Canton, and urge all citizens to make a difference by planting and caring for trees in your yard and in your neighborhood, and by supporting your city's government community forestry program. Okay. Next item, consideration to approve our agenda. Mr. Canton?
So moved.
I would like a clarification, please.
Yes, sir.
Last meeting, we took a vote on the receiving the resignation of the city manager. It wasn't clear with Mr. Goodwin's vote. If we could ask Jack, Councilman Good?
He did not vote, which is recorded as a positive vote for the motion.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second to approve the agenda? Second. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Okay, in your package you have the January 2nd, 2014 council meeting minutes. Are there any corrections or changes that need to be made to those? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Motion approved.
Motion to approve, we have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Now it's time for our 10-minute public input period. We have, first of all, Mr. Vic Young. Now, did you want to make a statement in the public input period, or did you just want to be available for the?
For the year.
Okay, that's okay. We'll just move on then. Thank you. Mr. Gary Lamb.
Gary Lamb, I'm the lead pastor of Action Church, and just want to take a moment to thank the mayor, thank the council, thank the employees of the city for trusting us last week with the warming shelter. It was refreshing to see the city, especially the council members, with a vision for our residents, not just the residents that would think about those, whether they're out there in the woods by choice or by circumstance. It was refreshing to have the support and that we were able to put that together. Just to let you guys know, over the course of the 2 days, the first night we had 27 people come out of the cold and stay. The second night, I guess, maybe due to the fact there was no power, 78 people came and stayed throughout the night there. And just wanted to thank you for that. It was, like I said, it was refreshing to have the city council actually take initiative, contact us about doing that. It was our honor to do that. If we can ever do it again in the future, it'd be our pleasure. And I also want to encourage the city, I know it's on the agenda, to talk about putting a task force together. That's something that needs to be explored in this community. I'm not one of these people that think we necessarily need a permanent homeless shelter, but we do need a plan for a warming shelter. It shouldn't be scrambling at noon, it shouldn't be scrambling at 1 o'clock. If that's using our facility, you're more than welcome to it. But I would encourage that as we approach some more cold days, the city council to take that serious, and let's actually put an action plan in place for what that looks like to have a warming shelter. Thank you very much.
Great idea. Gary, we have gratitude as well. We thank you for stepping up to the plate when the time came, and unfortunately we didn't have, you know, in the past years we have had a place, and obviously it got moved into another type of business or something, so that went away, and we appreciate you on such short notice stepping up and helping us out and really expressing some concern for our community. And as you said, you know, this was, Mr. Grant was involved very strongly in that, and you know, we weren't just talking about voters, we were talking about people that were in need, and I think that's what was really important. Mr. Goodman?
Yeah, I wanted to know if we could somewhat put a committee together, several people, and move forward on that. We've talked about this several different times, and as I see the weather forecast for next week, it's gonna be down to 20s many nights from now on. And we're just in January, we aren't through winter time.
Yeah, we have an item on our agenda that's gonna probably address what you're saying, I hope.
Sure.
Anyway, yeah. Okay, anyone else on that? I'd like to thank everyone that was involved in that, and especially Councilmember Grant, who really stepped up to the plate and made that happen, and organized some folks, got them together, and helped make it happen for sure. Okay, 10-minute public input period. Next, Jennifer Dunn.
Mayor, council people, you might all know me. I'm Jennifer Dunn. I'm a local business owner here. I just wanted to, I missed the last council meeting. I missed the swearing in of this new council. I was upset. I had the flu, so I was at home watching it online. And I just want to say that I'm very excited about the direction that this new council is already taking. I'm excited about some of the things I saw on the agenda and some of the things that went down at the last council meeting. I'm excited to actually, I'm seeing council members everywhere I go, downtown at the Main Street Morning the other day, there are council members. Councilman Grant and Councilman Russ, I worked with both of them on the homeless swarming shelter. I heard from both of them, I heard from you, Mayor, as well. And as one of the people that was really frustrated with the last council, I was personally insulted by the last council at one point, a council member, not the whole council, obviously. I am very excited to see how this is going, and I just wanted to say, throw my support out here, let you guys know I will serve any way I can the city as well, and thank you so much. I'm looking forward to see what you guys do, and I'm going to keep you on your toes.
Thank you. Chessie Gibson. Is that right?
It's Chrissy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Looked like an H.
I'm not sure if this is what I was supposed to do it, but I would like to start by saying thank you for leasing the land for us to use as a dog park. As you know, the lease kind of it renews every year. At this point, we had a 3-year lease that will renew up until a year. And we have copies. I don't know if you guys want to pass these around. What I would like to do today is, first of all, let you know how wonderful the dog park has been. We have daily users, weekly users. We have several here today just wanting to support the dog park and let you know how much they really do use it. Everything's coming along. The fence will be repaired. We're going to hire another company to come out and finish that. But basically, what we're trying to do is, now that everything's underground and the hard work is done, is propose that maybe the city would consider taking over at this point or in the future. Considering Atlanta Humane Society says that 47% of the people have dogs, and they do enjoy the dog park. It's been a huge success. The Woodstock opened one, the city of Woodstock, and it's been well received. So we're assuming that if the city would like to consider taking it over, it'll be well received as well. We did make, just so you can see, people who do want to keep it open, a petition and some pictures of a few. If you go on our Facebook, we have hundreds of pictures, but of different dogs that have been there that enjoy it. Obviously in the winter, it's a little slow, but we do still have some people that go even in the 40-degree weather. There's a lot of parks here that are banned to have dogs or dogs off leash. So it is very beneficial, especially for the city of Canton. So we would just like to propose that. You don't have to make a decision today by any means, but is there any reason why you would consider not that we can work on to make the proposal look more attractive to you, or anything we can do to help?
I think what we would do is just, we would have to bring this topic up at a work session
Yes, sir.
and discuss it at that time.
Of course.
And if there is anything, I would hope that the council members would, bring the questions up and we could get them to you in between now and whenever we have the work session.
And I also have, if you want to see what it would run the city basically a year, it's very minimal. Just to keep up the trash, landscaping, and the insurance, and that's really pretty much it. If whoever wants to see the numbers, because I know that's important to the city too.
Yeah. Anything that you have, feel free to, you can
Okay.
email it to me or
I'll
to
do
the
that.
city clerk would be fine. And she can distribute that information to all the council members,
Okay.
and we'll have something to go on at that point.
If the contract, what's the date of the contract, to expire?
It doesn't expire, does it?
January 6th, but it renews unless there's
Yeah,
one of
okay.
the other side says,
It's annual renewals from that.
correct. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Mr. Russ?
When the park was first opened, the gentleman that really came to the council for like 6 months in a row to get us to open that. But I know there was some complaints by the residents around that about not having trees around it to kind of hide the fencing, whatever. Is that still an issue or not?
No, we actually adjusted that and put plenty of trees in. And in fact, since you brought that up, we have a very great gentleman that lives across the street that does the landscaping and stuff for us. So the neighbors have kind of settled down and have enjoyed it. And plus, there's 2 of them that use it on a daily basis as well. So, yeah, but there have been trees that were planted. We adjusted that within a week of the complaint, for sure. That was, I think, about a year or 2 ago.
It was when it first opened, I remember that. And I haven't been back, obviously, very often.
You talking about the one off Juniper Street? Because I know they had a
Yes, yes,
temporary.
yes,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm the one that planted them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else have anything at all? Okay. Thank you. We'll bring that up in probably the next work session or 2, and we have a little time to devote to that.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, before we move into the regular
Old
work,
business, yes.
I'd like to have a minute to make a comment,
Sure.
if you don't mind. This is something that's been on my mind for a little while, and I wanted to address the mayor and the council and any citizens that care to listen. And I'm going to speak a little bit from my heart. I'm not a great speaker, giving speeches, but bear with me for a few minutes. I think you'll be hopefully at the end pleased. First, I just want to regress just a moment and just mention that over the past 2 to 4 years that the previous councils with the mayor has made a lot of progress in the area of, one, reducing debt, which is a major obstacle that faced the city. And doing that with no tax increases. We've entered into building two major parks. One of them is using our money but built on county property. We've done a lot with the streets, we've done a lot with downtown, and I could go on and on, but I think you'll all realize that the past 2 to 4 years, this city, under some difficult times, has made a lot of progress. Maybe not as much as we all would like, but still we've made some progress. I don't think it's any secrets to anybody here that the past 2 weeks have been rather disappointing to me. And I think most people will understand why I'm disappointed, but I gotta realize that change is always gonna be. And I've always been, in my past work experience, been through an awful lot of changes, developing a lot of people, and involving some people's lives. And I accept change, and I will continue to accept change. With that, I've got to tell you that I want to change the past 2 weeks, because it was so disturbing to me that I went and got some outside counseling. So I want to change my attitude, I want to change my behavior. It has not been my norm, and I don't like that part about me. I do not, but it happened, and I hope some might have some understanding. I did pledge when I took the oath a couple of years ago that I was going to support the city of Canton. I wasn't going to support any particular group at any one particular time. And I still stick by that pledge, which means there'll be times that you will see me go this way, and maybe the next time it's the other way. Because as I see things, I'm gonna make my vote, and I will speak up. Now, today, the way it may look, the way it looks to me, is that I might be now the vocal minority, like some have been in the past. And not a pleasant seat, but I imagine I can deal with it. I do have a vision for the city, and I think that's one thing that I'd like to think it's a very good characteristic, is that I do have vision. I had vision in many ways, and I think that's led to some of my successes in the past. And I still have those visions, and I'll be happy to share those visions. And again, this may place me in the vocal minority, but I do believe, this council and people in the audience, that we all have the same goals and directions that we want this city to go. And I still, although it may seem at times to some that I don't, but that is far from the case. I am dedicated to this city to see that it moves forward. The future. I plan on look forward to working with each and every one of you, Mr. Mayor, new council members, past council members, Mr. Ingram, and all the other city employees, staff, as well as the citizens. We're going to move forward. I can see accomplishments that we can build upon what we've already tried to do in success, and one is continue to reduce our debt. There's still some city improvements that we all would like to see, if we can afford them. It can come in the way of streets. We got a big thing in front of us as far as water and sewer. The parks are well on their way and should be finishing up in the early part of this year. We got some economic growth that has been coming on stream, and it's really going to start taking off from this point forward in Northside Hospital, the largest single investment in this city, I guess, ever. We still have the bluffs that we can develop, and we've made a commitment this past council to putting a person in charge of economic development, which we have been absent of for some time. I think that's going to pay dividends in the future. Now, I realize I may not be loved by all, But I will say, Mr. Mayor, I love you. I love every one of you. Thank you.
Very well stated, Mr. Huffman. Appreciate those comments.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to publicly thank and that Mr. Goodwin is here with us. He had a medical event and spent a couple of days in the hospital, and I'm just tickled that you're able to be here. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, you had a scare there. All right, the next item on the agenda under old business, discussion and possible action on appointment of committee members. Basically, I just want to announce at this point that I will announce the nominations for the various citizen and council committee, citizen committees at our February 6th meeting, the nominations, and I will do so based on some of the information that some of the nominations that I've received from some of you as well. And if any of you have any more names to throw in the pot, feel free to do so. When you really get to looking at it, there's not that many slots that are in. I mean, some of them are up for reappointment, and it's my anticipation right now, for the most part, I would nominate them to be reappointed. There are some slots where someone has stepped aside, wanted to come off the committee or whatever, that there are a few openings there. And I have received some recommendations from council members, particularly so. So I will have that slate there for your consideration at the February meeting, and then you will have until the second meeting in February, and we will vote on those. Okay, discussion and possible action on appointment of John Beresford as Etowah River Park Liaison. Mr. Huffman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we discussed briefly 2 weeks ago, the park is coming to an end. I hope each and every one of you get by and without endangering yourself, go by and see the progress that has been made. There have been 64, as of 2 weeks ago, there were 64 days, no, I think it was 68, that have been interrupted due to weather, which obviously has placed us behind. But with that said, we still we'll probably be in that park in April. And not doing all of the things, the field needs to grow. But with all that said, the person who started this thing and brought it to this point is John Beresford. And it's kind of his baby. And he has done some miraculous things out there. One in particular, I think, and I won't dwell on all of them, but had John not been on top of things, the county was going to take $180,000 out of our budget for that park. And John caught that. And the county said, okay, you're right. That was $180,000 went to the bottom line. I think it's only fair, not only to Mr. Beresford, but I think it's only fair to our citizens in our city that he see this to the end. He works with a committee of people out there that they got a great working relationship. They understand each other. They work through any areas of difficulty. And I think we would be kidding ourselves or taking a step backwards if we didn't allow him to go ahead and finish the job. So I would like to make a motion that Mr. Beresford be retained as a consultant to finish the Etowah Park.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
I would like to say.
Yeah, okay, sure.
This project has been going on, actually before I came on, I think. I know we talked about it. Ms. Tanner had already been working on the park a number of years before I came on, and then she stayed in that role for a couple of years, and then I took it on for about 3 years, and then Mr. Beresford came on and has done an excellent job handling the park. And yes, he did find that money. He did save us a lot of money there. And he has a good rapport And I think it would be in our asset to use his skills that he has and the people skills he has down there for those people to get this job completed. It's gonna be a beautiful park. We already have a lot of people talking about it and a lot of people looking very forward to it. I would suggest that we look at what we like for him to do and how we'd like for him to do it. I think we should keep him on.
Okay, anyone else? Mr. Russ?
I really am appreciative to John Beresford, and everything that's been said I completely agree with. The problem I have is I'm trying to figure out the role, since he is no longer on the council and no longer an official of the city of Canton. I wish there was some other way to keep him involved, but I just think, I'm not sure what the liaison role even defined. You haven't defined what he's going to be doing, and that's the problem that I have. I don't disagree with anything you've said, Hookie. And 100%, it just, what do we do? What does he do? And is the city and the county really in agreement as to what that role should be?
May I answer that?
Go ahead.
Mr. Russ, I have been kind of a backup for Mr. Beresford. I've attended not near the number of meetings, but a good many of them. And I'll be more than happy to be that liaison, that if a council person like John is needed, I will be there to take that role on and report back here. And if we need Mr. Beresford to come forward and speak, I'll be the representative from the city to take on that role, just like he was. But I will take his lead on what needs to be done and how to do it, and I will just be there as a representative from the city.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
What would the city's liability be for injury?
I don't think that's a real significant risk. I mean, just like anybody down there, we don't have a whole lot of risk or liability until it's all done anyway. But ultimately, if somebody steps in a hole, they have to prove we knew about the hole. So right now, the contractor's responsible for most of what's going on. That's why they don't want anybody on there.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Canton?
I don't have a problem with it at all if we maybe use the word advisor instead of, and the reason being is liaison sort of means coordinator. And I don't think we have, him being a citizen, we have the ability to give him that legal authority to do that. I think he should be an advisor if we're gonna do anything on it, an advisor. And there are two people that I understand right now that are involved in this, and correct me if I'm not wrong, I think Joby West works with, man, I can't, name fails me right now. Bill Eccles, and they're basically the legal or the decision makers in that. And we could, rather than vote on it as a definite, that we would be recommending to them that they utilize Mr. Beresford's services and let them determine the need and the requirement for how they would utilize them. That, I think that's, you know, in fairness to them, since they have the legal responsibility, that we should allow them to decide when and if and how they want to take advantage of that expertise. John did put a lot of time into that part, and it behooves them to utilize whatever they can out of his experience, and I really thank him for volunteering to continue on. But I think from a standpoint of coordination, it should be up to those two to more or less determine where and how they'd want to use them. So if the motion were such as that we would like to recommend to those that are involved in the process that they utilize Mr. Beresford where they feel appropriate, I think that would be more, more suitable to the environment we're in.
Well, I'm not sure if we would be recommending something that they already have the authority to do. And I mean, I think they can already, do that, and so I don't know that.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Beresford gets involved in things that the city engineer probably does not. It's not all, let's say, just engineering. There are some somewhat political issues. Fortunately enough, that group of people that meets over there, which is the architect, as well as Mr. Eccles, as well as Ty, the construction, Mr. Beresford, and a couple others, excuse me. They operate as a very smooth, annual type of working relationship. When there's a question, they sit there and just talk around it, and it's not formalized. Everybody knows that Bill Eccles controls it. It's under his direction. We all know that. But we can sit there and talk a lot less formal than we are right now, and we get it done, or they get it done. I think might be trying to make something bigger than what it really is.
Okay. Mr. Grant?
I too want to thank Mr. Beresford for all his work, and I hope he's front and center in the ribbon cutting when it happens, and hopefully it's going to happen sooner rather than later. And again, I don't disagree with anything that's been said and his involvement. But I just wondered if it would be more appropriate, Councilman Huffman, since you have served as the backup, if you are the kind of official council liaison and you would seek advice from John or others as needed. But I'd be more comfortable as you, if we're gonna name a liaison, being that versus then Mr. Beresford since he's now assistant. But again, that's no credit away from him, what he's accomplished or his contributions to this project. But here's what we're almost
I'll be
finished.
happy to accept that. I'm just gonna say I will follow his lead. But where there's a situation that, for whatever reason, requires a city council person, which really is not much, I'll be happy to be there and take that responsibility.
Okay, why don't you withdraw your motion, and I'll make a motion that you be the liaison, and John Beresford can be your, attached at the hip to you. I mean, that kind of works, and I'll make that motion if you'd like.
Okay, I'll withdraw it, and we'll make it work.
I'd like to make a
Yeah,
motion.
do we need to do that, or we just need to ask you to do that, because, you know, I don't think the council took action before on
No,
it.
they didn't.
So why don't you just
You
proceed?
don't have to vote then at all?
We didn't the last time.
No, we couldn't vote last time.
No, I don't mean last meeting, I mean when Mr. Beresford was,
Okay.
when he served. So there's nothing to keep you from going out there and dealing with that.
I've already been out there. I've been going out
Been out there?
No, I
There's
go
nothing
to the
keep you
meetings.
from doing that.
I go to the meetings.
Okay.
So we clear? Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Next item. Discussion and possible action on decision to reject previous bids and rebid Brown Park restroom construction. Nathan, you wanna?
I'll just ask, Mr. Dyer, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is just a formality that we need council to formally reject all bids so that we can take this back to the open market to rebid. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, move to reject all bids, take it back, and reopen the process.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor, I'm sorry, you have a comment?
I don't know if it's on that motion, which I think we officially have to do to reject those bids, and I'd like to make a motion after we vote on that, if that's appropriate, so.
Okay. The motion here is to reject the bids for the restrooms at Brown Park and ask our staff to rebid that. Is that correct? A rebid?
Re-advertising. See.
Or do we really? Okay.
If that's a motion, can I make a
Let's
comment?
go ahead and make your discussion now, if you don't mind.
Well,
you raise a good point, if you're gonna do anything other than the formal bid process, at this point, you really just need to reject those bids.
Okay.
And then talk about what you're gonna
Yeah,
do going
okay.
forward.
So moved to reject.
We have a motion to reject. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Mr. Grant, you have a comment.
I would actually like to make a motion that, that we already rejected the bids, that we abandon this project at this time. I think it's be a very nice luxury to have the restrooms there, but I think we all talking about saving money and taxpayer money. I know that during events, huge events in Brown Park, or the city, such as Canton Festival of Arts, we've opened up the lobby restrooms for our exhibitors and things of that nature. Again, it would be a nice amenity to have, but I think if we prioritize it, would that be the place, even if we didn't spend $250,000, it was, 80 or 70,000, I still think that may be money that's better spent. It's my personal opinion, but.
I tend to agree with you. The only thing that we do have to remember is that this is a project, and there's probably others that we could maybe better spend that money for, I'm not sure, but it is, it is for recreational sales tax, and I believe is what. SPOS, it was gonna be used. So it wouldn't be general fund property tax money that we're actually spending for that. But, it's still
I
money.
understand, I just wonder, I think there may be other projects that we would apply to that SPOS fund that might be more, have a higher prioritization.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I personally would agree with, Mr. Grant's idea of taking that off the board right now. Maybe later on in the year, we could bring that project forward. Let's see how we do, if there's some other projects that might take priority over that. In the meantime, one of the things that we wanted to do is, of course, move that little blue porta potty out there from out front of the city hall, where we spent over $700,000 to improve that thing, and you step outside and there's that blue porta potty. If we could possibly relocate that, do you think, down towards the police department?
They don't mind.
The chief's in here, maybe he'll speak up.
Yes, ma'am.
If Mr. Grant used the words, I make a motion, because if he did, we're discussing before a second.
Did you make a motion?
You started that way.
I did,
Oh, you,
I did.
okay, he made a motion. I would think that should go to a work session, actually.
Okay.
Would you withdraw that, and then we could
I'll withdraw my motion.
have it discussed at our, we will not be rebidding it right now.
Mr. Mayor, I think that's a great idea to go to a work session, but I think what we should do is do an analysis of what it costs us to do porta potties for all of these events relative to the cost of amortizing a permanent building, and then make a decision.
I think
on whether to proceed with it.
the event holder has been paying for the porta johns, except for probably one that we've got here, but I think they pay for it. Is that what you want to mention there?
I was gonna say that the Arts Festival pays for their
Yes.
facilities.
Right. Okay, anything else? We'll discuss that item as to whether or not we want to proceed or to reject that altogether at our February 6th work session. Okay, the next item, discussion of ordinance to allow growler sales in wine shops and ancillary tasting licenses in downtown Canton. You were involved in that one or not?
I was actually gonna defer to Mr. Dyer. I think you did a great summary.
What I'd like to suggest is that you just roll this over to the work session where we can talk about it again. You got my little statement about it, and there's a lot of different little choices you're making in there, and so maybe another work session.
Yeah, I think one work session, I think we would all better understand the particulars of it. Mr. Grant?
I know there were some questions last time of the difference between a wine shop and, a growler store. And I know that our Main Street Director, Megan Griffin, has been doing some research of, other wine shops in Blue Ridge, Dahlonega, and all those things, and I think has some information on that. I don't, if we're gonna roll it over to a work session, maybe it's more appropriate that she addresses that at the work session, but. at some point, I
That's a
think
good
it'd be great
idea.
to hear from her.
So you've been going around checking out these places?
It's just research, it's just research. Tough job, but, yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We will do that. Okay, any other comments about that? Okay, if not, then we will entertain the second reading and consideration of the Planning Commission recommendation for rezoning of 159 and 197 Railroad Street from Central Business District and Etowah River Corridor to Light Industrial, case Z 1311-002. I don't know if you that or Ken is, you're not familiar with that?
I get to
Okay.
prefer all these.
Yeah, that one we did talk about at the last meeting, at the work session. I still have mixed feelings about it personally, about changing the zoning there. Seems to me, I still think we should be able to just, since it's there and it's been there for a while, under a conditional use, allow for conditional use, because I'm not sure we want to change it. If you actually change the zoning and that place goes under or goes away, then there's some other kind of factory or something that we may or may not want in that location to come right in. But anyway, Mr. Grant.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I was gonna suggest the same thing, because if we did a conditional, I mean, they could still operate their business, but if it changes, I mean, I think that whole area on Railroad Street is just a prime candidate for, redevelopment and mixed use thing, so I'd love to grant the current tenant the ability to run their business since they're already there, but I'd be much more in favor of keeping a conditional zoning.
So in this, let me get a clarification. We could say deny that zoning and allow it as a conditional use? Could we do that?
Not tonight. To allow it as a conditional use, you're gonna have to change the zoning ordinance to include this use as a potential conditional use. Then they'd have to apply for conditional use and go through a public hearing. Because Etowah River Corridor zoning does not allow this business as a conditional use.
Now, does it list, but my question again is, does it list every single business?
It lists the potential conditional, it has no permitted uses. It has a list of specific potential conditional uses. You would have to add this to the list of potential conditional uses.
So do we not have any manufacturing down in the ERC now?
Sure we do.
Sure we do.
There are some manufacturing operations that are in there that have been continuously operating, and they are legal, non-conforming uses.
Because they were existing at the time the Etowah River Corridor was created. Existing businesses are allowed. Things that existed at the time, well, they're not even non-conforming, they're actually allowed in the zoning, if I remember the wording.
So all those businesses that have anything to do with manufacturing have been there since the ERC was put in place?
Yes, sir, such as the concrete plant is the major one that I can think of.
About the furniture company.
Well, I tell you what, I would suggest that we deny that and go back and on our own volition, add that to the conditional use for ERC.
Can we do that?
Yeah, it takes a little while, but we could.
Yeah, we just have to start the process. We would basically just have to have a public hearing on that. You could speed it up by agreeing to have the public hearing in front of the council and not even save the step of the Planning and Zoning Commission, which has already recommended this anyway.
Okay.
Motion to deny.
Second.
Have a motion to deny, have a second. Oh, you did say, okay. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Okay. The next item, second.
Do we need to direct the staff to begin the process
That would be my suggestion.
and to have the
begin that
public hearing in
process.
front of the city council?
Right.
Make a motion to do that,
Well, you would need to decide to have to hold the public hearing yourselves rather than go through the planning and zoning. So
or,
at least,
okay, then, so moved to direct the
You want
staff.
the council to hold it themselves?
Yeah, we can shorten the period.
Okay. The
So
motion is to instruct staff to begin the process of amending our zoning ordinance to include,
A
that type,
conditional use.
as a conditional use, some manufacturing, I guess, or whatever it is, manufacturer.
We would do it, we'd be very specific, yeah, we would be for that business.
For that particular business, okay. Have a second. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All members voted for the motion. Thank you. Okay, now, item F, second reading and consideration of the Planning Commission recommendation on the amendment of condition number 6 regarding placement of garages at Summer Walk, case ZCA 1311-001. I think we did talk about this one as well at our last meeting. Do we have a motion or discussion? We should have a motion first, I guess. Do we have a motion to approve or deny?
I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any other discussion?
Do you need clarification on, didn't you have 2 proposed?
Yes, we, based upon discussions at the work session meeting and questions in regards to the language about the gas meters, staff did prepare an alternative ordinance that if mayor and council did approve the request to amend this condition number 6, it would just remove the language about the gas meters, but approve the removal of the rear entry garages and specify the number of front entry and the number of side entry garages.
Okay. Do you want to, I said, who made that motion there? You did. Do you want to include the removal of that language?
I do want to approve the removal of that language.
Do you want the gas, there was a restriction on
Back to
location of
gas.
gas meters. The difference is about the great gas meters. One has it where it's you're restricting the location of the gas meters, one has no restriction on the location of gas meters.
So your motion, it basically is that we approve this zoning
Yeah.
except for the portion regarding the location of the gas meters.
Mr. Mayor, honestly, I went out there and spent some time looking around, and I spoke with the gentlemen before the meeting. I did not consider the gas. I was making the suggestion of approval just on the location of the garage and driveways.
Okay.
If I remember, the restriction was that it had to be either on the opposite side of the garage, or if on the garage side, it had to be to the back of the house. The word "to" was nebulous because that theoretically means any place past the midpoint. And that was the restriction on the gas, and I would like to keep that restriction, not just open it up to anything.
The intent was that the gas meter be placed along the rear side of the house or the side of the house opposite the garage and driveway.
The language was to the rear, and to the rear is sort of
It should be at the rear, shouldn't it?
at the rear, and if you intend to have it on the rear of the house, then it would be at, not to.
Mr. Mayor, they're building these homes already with a side entrance. We just want to do the same thing.
I think we should just make the motion and leave the gas meters out of it completely.
If council members will recall at the work session in regards to the discussions about the gas meters, I had brought up the issue of Atlanta Gas Light installs all of those service lines, and they are an entity that does have powers of eminent domain, and as such, they're exempt from complying with zoning.
I don't think you want to get into telling where the gas meters have to go.
I don't think we need to
On
do
this
that.
house, we can't put it there because of this, and
Leave it out.
Okay, so, Ken, are you clear on what we want?
Yes, sir.
More than we are?
I believe the motion would be to approve the amendment to condition number 6, and it would be the amended ordinance that does not have the language in regards to the gas meters. It just specifies a certain number of front entry garages and a certain number of side entry
Yes.
garages.
Absolutely. Okay, we have a motion and we have a second on that motion. Any other discussion or questions? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All members vote for the motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Okay. All right, item Hey, under new business, discussion of warming emergency shelters, a possible task force to create a proactive plan. Councilman Bragg.
Thank you, Mayor. As we already discussed, and as Mr. Lamb addressed earlier, and as Councilman Goodwin confirmed, you know, we are in the midst of terrible weather here and more predicted. So that's why I wanted to put on the agenda tonight. The goal would be to review and recommend a proactive plan for future warming centers and weather-related shelters. In the summer, we'll be dealing with heat and other things. There could be flooding or anything. So I don't think it's just the warming shelters. But I did want to take a moment. Gary Lamb did bring this up to thank those who came together last week to work together as a community to provide these warming shelters. And it was a wonderful effort by the community, and I was just really impressed and touched by it. I had, the night before, had not slept a wink, and then had sent a message to Mr. Lamb because I knew he had provided some shelters in the past, and I woke up the next morning and there was an email from Councilman Rust, had the same issues, and we just went to work starting connecting people, and a lot of it was through Facebook, I have to say. But I did want to think that it was a great community effort, but I did want to call specific attention and thank the people, primary players of that, and it was Action Church for really opening their building and providing the supplies. Pastor Gary Lamb for really spearheading the effort without any complaint. He was ready to get to work. Angel Fire 7 Barbecue that provided the food for that event, chili on both nights. Tommy Simmons with Action Church for supervising the building for 48 straight hours. And my understanding, he did not leave that building for 48 hours. The city for being proactive, again, especially Councilman Rust and Mayor Hobgood. I know there were conversations going on and to allow this happen. I want to give special thanks to our Main Street Director, Megan Griffin, and Jennifer Dunn, who spoke earlier, who took it among themselves to go out and spread information to local businesses in Spanish about the shelters, and they spent all day doing that. The Canton Police Department and Chief Merchant for deploying the mobile sign with information on that. And keep in mind, this all happened within 2 hours. Robbie Westbrook with the Emergency Operations Center for getting the word out. Camille Ways with the city for getting the word out. People for Canton stepping up. We had people sharing information on Facebook, bringing coats, bringing supplies, and I want to thank Facebook for allowing this medium for this to happen. It was just really, really impressive. And so my intention was to hopefully suggest that we establish an immediate task force to look at the situation. Again, we have some colder weather coming up. And I've spoken with some citizens who have graciously offered to serve on that task force. Gary Lamb with Action Church, Jennifer Dunn, and then Kendall Jones with Musk Ministries, who Musk Ministries was also involved in the conversations last week and with assisting. Those are three, and we may need more, and if others suggest more, or these citizens, but I would like to suggest that we move ahead tonight with starting this task force with at least those three citizens so that we can look at, and I think Mr. Lamb said he would volunteer to open Action Church up again, even if that's an interim solution until a more permanent or proactive solution. I just think we need a plan in place, and I think we learned a lot last week of who the players can be and how we can work with the city just so we don't have to be reactive next time. So
you would do that in the form of a motion that we appoint those individuals to work as a task force along, and let you be the council's representative on that, on behalf of the task force, if that's okay.
I'd be happy to.
And then as the need arises and as many people as we can get involved in that, we would ask the task force to try to incorporate others as well.
I'd like to just include one special thank you to you, because without you, this wouldn't have happened. So thank you very much. We really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Okay, we have a motion. Is it clear? Everybody, I'm sorry. We have a second? Okay.
Can we vote?
We're going to do it now.
So moved.
Okay. This is a voting session.
I was just wondering if we're going to adhere to We are,
pretty much.
the Cummings Law.
I went with motion to say those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Of course, it might be that, it truly might be an emergency if we get really cold weather before our next meeting anyway, you know that. Yeah, good thing there, and Bill, I really appreciate what you have done, particularly so, in getting that going.
Mr. Mayor, I think it could become an emergency and to
Yeah.
decrease the likelihood of debris and everything scattered around while people are trying to find a warm shelter.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, the next item is a discussion and review of current business license fee structure and analysis in comparison to surrounding cities. Councilman Grant?
Yes, this was something that I've been looking at for a while, and partly for selfish reasons, comparing my business's occupational tax rates versus what they were in former cities, but just looking at my business, which is a 4-person employee, and talking to Woodstock just to kind of see what they're doing and looking at how we're doing it. And I worked with them, who they've collected some data. They're kind of going through the same process of reviewing theirs. And I included this comparison chart in your package that compares 5 typical company types: small company, which is 1 employee; medium company, where 4 employees; a small to medium, 4 employees; medium, 8 employees; and large is 20. Very large is 105. So those are the classifications that you have on this chart here. And if you look at it, and it's surrounding cities, and even including Atlanta and Marietta and Sandy Springs, some much larger than Canton. And if you look at this chart, and again, this is just a comparison chart, you don't go into all the details here, but you see on our small and medium companies in Canton, our occupational tax rates are much higher, significantly higher than surrounding cities. If you look at them, the very large companies are significantly lower. So I'm just bringing this up. I don't have any answers or solutions other than it looks odd to me, and I think we need to review it. I met with Mr. Ingram yesterday, and he's done a lot more work and knows a lot more about this than I do. And apparently there are 2 ways you can charge the occupational tax, which is otherwise known as business license. You can do it per employee, or you can do it as a percentage of revenues. We do it as a percentage of revenues now. I did determine through Mr. Ingram's, insights that we are currently using the SIC, which is Standard Industry Classifications, which were actually updated in 1997. We're out of compliance, and now they're in place as the National American Industry Classification System, NAICS. So Canton is out of compliance, and it has been, I guess, since 1997, since we switched classification systems. And that tells us one thing, that we haven't reviewed these fees for at least 16 years, if not longer. So I just wanted to bring this up. There is an issue of what we're currently charging and the revenue that I think it brings over a little over $500,000 into the city, and I'm not suggesting that we reduce our revenue, because we probably need all we can get. But I would suggest that we need to kind of look at ways to be competitive, especially for small businesses. And again, Mr. Ingram can speak to this. I think he's done a lot of work in comparison I was very impressed with. And I know this is just one small piece of the puzzle, becoming more business friendly. There are other development fees, and I think we could look at it and just look and see when were the last time they were reviewed. But again, I just wanted to kind of to bring it up for discussion, and again, Mr. Ingram can probably shed more insight into it, but it looked odd to me, and it's not just for selfish reasons for my company. It's looking at small companies, and I've been approached by a couple other small business owners where our current system seems to be punishing to small companies and very rewarding to large companies. Again, I'm not trying to charge them more money, but or even, you know, try to expose something here, other than this chart shows that something's wrong here and suggests that we take a look at it.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
And I probably need to address this to Mr. Ingram, or Mr. Grant, if you got the answer, but in looking at the chart, studying it today, it's very different in the way the calculations are run. If you look at the blue, which is percentage of revenue, and the green, which is the number of employees, you'll see percentage of revenue in just about every case is sky high. Percentage of, or by number of employees, they're very low. Is that, am I accurate in that quick study of a neophyte?
I think that's a fair observation. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to make one small correction. We use profitability ratios that are not just really a percentage of revenue. We look at industries, we scale those on a scale of 1 to 6, more profitable industries and less profitable industries. So there's a little bit more than just saying it's an X percentage of the revenues. I have not given a lot of research to some of these other municipalities and counties that also use the gross revenue method, so I can't really compare ours to theirs and say, are our profitability ratio tables higher? But Councilman Grant, you made a reference that we do need to update our industry classification system, that our occupational tax is based on. We need to update that. That is a quite substantial task, and we look to do that over the upcoming year in anticipation of the next renewals, which will occur in about a year from now. And in doing that, whatever the council wants us to do, if they want to look, ask us to consider some of the alternatives, some possible changes, we'd be more than happy to do that.
Well, if we've been kind of at differences with, let's just take Woodstock, we always compare them. And if we have been different for over 16 years, which I don't know if that's accurate or not, that's a pretty good reason why they are where they are and we're where we are.
To clarify that comment, we've been using the standard industry codes classification. They actually changed in 1997. The government quit formally using the SIC codes, those standard industry classifications, and started using North American industry classifications, what Councilman Grant alluded to. That was in 1997. I do not know when the city of Woodstock or Holly Springs or anything made any of their changes to their occupational tax structure.
Are you saying there's no standard industry classification index now, no SIC, no, that's way gone? Or we just didn't switch over to the other?
We need to switch over and use the NAIC.
And why do we need to do that? I mean, so then there's no, then we can't use what we're using now, is what you're saying. If it's law, we gotta switch, we can't use what we're using now.
I do not. That may be a Mr. Dyer question, whether
I'm
legal or
not
not.
sure it's a requirement. I think it's, you may have some choice.
Right.
It's just out of date statistical information.
Well, that's what I was wondering, it's out of date. So the question is, what, if the new stuff, would that, under the, existing margin of profitability for the various industries, would it be about the same? Would it be, licenses be more? Would they be less?
From my observations, the NAICS has a lot more segregation.
Classification.
Yes, sir. It might be more tailored to certain industries, whereas now you may have quite a few industries grouped together under one.
Mr. Mayor, this appears to me to be a very complex problem, which I would say we ought to direct the city staff to look at and come back with, recommendations of how we should proceed forward, because, we're talking about classifications, we're talking about comparison of apples to pears, and when we look at Woodstock does, because they're using an entirely different method of computing than we are. Should we use the same method they use? We don't know all of those answers, and I think we should probably direct city staff to come back with a proposal. This may be a 6-month study by city staff. We know it's a problem, or we perceive it to be a problem, and we should at least look at it and see if there's something that we should undertake to make it more friendly, business friendly in terms of licensing.
Well, I think it's a good idea, and I think that we probably wouldn't want, hopefully, to change anything before the beginning of the fiscal year, if we chose to do so. because our current budget is set based on the amount of, which is probably a little over 500,000 or so. And if we were to change it and it were to drop to 50% of that or less, we'd have to make that up some way or another. So I think if we get them to take a look at it and make recommendations for the beginning of the fiscal year.
And that's totally my intention is, like, I don't have the answers certainly, but I just wanted to call it to attention and I think that study, and I'm not trying to create more work for the city staff, but I think it needs to be done, so.
Good point. Mr. Hoffman?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thanks. If you took a look at the green, and went down and this is just a generality, and see the cities that are in the green, like Holly Springs, Woodstock, Gainesville, Roswell, Alpharetta, those are all the cities that are moving right along on their economic development. And the ones in the blue are probably much slower, but they got the much higher price. And if it's been out of line for so many years, boy, this is something that could be, as far as economic development, a major move.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, moving right along. Okay, you don't have anything else, do you? First reading, this is the first reading of the application for alcohol pouring license for Marvel Bistro, Inc., 250 East Main Street, Canton, applied for by Joseph Gannett, a proposed outlet manager who resides at 327 Northbrook Lane, Woodstock. Nathan, do you have anything on that? This would be the first reading. It is for a pouring license in, I believe, in what was the hot dog restaurant here on Main Street. So we're proud to see something going in there. The hot dog place is apparently gone, so we got another place coming in there, and it's same folks as have the restaurant just up the street. We appreciate them expanding, and apparently they're doing well. It's exactly what we want to see. Now, so this will be considered the first reading for that. We may end up having a special called meeting to act on that particular issue prior to the next meeting. And the reason being is because when they made application on January the 3rd, they were unaware of our change in meeting format. The city staff was unaware of our change of meeting format and gave some information that may not have been entirely accurate after our change occurred. So they had made plans to move forward based on that, and so once again, in our effort to be more business friendly, I think we need to look ways to help people instead of ways to keep them from doing things. And so we're going to look perhaps to have a special call meeting just to go ahead and move that along because of the time schedule that they have as well. Anyone else? Mr. Cummings?
Yes, I was gonna recommend that because of the time schedule, but we have that special call meeting at, say, 5:30 the same evening on February 6th, so that we don't violate our procedures, but we're also able to, address.
Accommodate.
Accommodate the business.
Okay. Sounds good. Anyone else have any comments? Okay. All right, I am going to appoint a council city manager search committee of Mr. Rust and Mr. Grant, if you would serve there. Also, I'm going to appoint a fire services committee to begin once again to take a look at our fire service needs, what they are, and what we do in order to meet those needs. I would ask that Mr. Cummings, Ms. McGrew, and Bill Grant serve on that committee with Mr. Cummings serving as the chair on that one. Also, and I would ask that you vote at this time, at this meeting on this time, or we could wait till the next, but I'd like to go ahead and appoint nominate a mayor pro tem. Ask Mr. Grant if he would serve in that capacity for the next 12 months, in keeping with the usual procedure, except for the past year. I have since the last 6 years, with the exception of the last year, have rotated that on an annual basis, and it would be my intention to do that as well. So I would hope someone, I personally can make the motion on that one, that Mr. Grant serve as the mayor pro tem. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members vote for the motion. And the other committees, as I mentioned earlier, I will have a slate of those committees for the various boards and so forth, that I would like to nominate at our February 2nd meeting for your review, and then action at the February the 20th meeting. We will be, just as an announcement, most of the council members will be attending a brief portion of this county retreat at Marsley's Gardens tomorrow morning. We'll be driving over and discussing matters with them and participating in their retreat for a couple hours or so. Basically, I think it's to build an even better relationship with the county and discuss perhaps fire services and also economic development, and particularly the request for some additional funding for the Cherokee County Office of Economic Development that came up sometime earlier a few months ago. So we will be doing that tomorrow. If there's anything else.
Council
Yes.
introduced items.
Sir?
The council introduced items.
No, we didn't have any. Those would have been, that would have been put on when we approved the agenda. Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, I just taken it in line.
Oh, well, I skipped it because there wasn't anything there. That's really, I didn't.
I got some things I'd like to put there.
Uh,
Not for this
the
meeting.
next meeting you can, sure, absolutely. Or if you already know what they are, why don't you just put them on the agenda?
That's what I want.
Okay, that's good. So it wouldn't necessarily need to be under council use.
I just want to know, let the council know that I'm adding it to the agenda so they have time to prepare.
Okay, that's good, that's good. But you're gonna tell them what it is, aren't you?
If you're giving me the okay to do it here, I would like an update on the Hidden Branch, street out there that we're working with the county.
Hidden Valley.
Hidden Valley, excuse me.
Yeah, okay.
Nothing's happening there.
Right.
And we need to go ahead and finish whatever we're gonna do with the county, and we possibly could discuss that maybe even tomorrow. But I'd like that to be added, Ms. Stanton, on the work session. Another thing that, we need to bring forward is still a resolution on the stage. That hasn't been.
That's been dragging on.
That's been dragging on. I don't want to have these things continue to drag on. And last but not least, but the park usage, the scheduling of events and how we're gonna work with that, as well as we need to get a bid or request for quotations on maintenance of the park.
I believe I appointed a committee for that.
Yes,
before.
we did.
And Mr. Cummins, you, and I believe it was Jack, and I don't believe Jack could make the last
He couldn't.
meeting. So maybe we need to see if y'all can get together and discuss that item before our next meeting.
You were the chair.
Well, I'll be there if I was. Sure. That's good. Okay. Anything else you got on there?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. One other thing that I'd like to do, I know the renewal of our insurance is coming up for the city employees, and there's a tight schedule, as Mr. Ingram may have mentioned to some of you about getting this done, and we prefer not to have a special call meeting on anything like that if we can avoid it, and we may be able to avoid it. But what I would like to ask, I'd like to ask Mr. Huffman, Mr. Grant, and Mr. Rust if they would serve as a council committee regarding that insurance matter, so that if Mr. Ingram or the city manager needs to call a group together and get some ideas about changes to the insurance. We don't know what the cost is going to be right now, and it may come back that it's way high, and we may have to make some adjustments in deductibles or things like that, you know. So co-pays and this sort of thing, maybe have to be some there, and I'd like for y'all, if y'all would, to, be available at some point to meet with him, so I don't have to come back and do that again.
If I may just mention that, insurance companies notoriously wait until the last moment that they have to put out a quotation for the next year, on purpose, so that you don't have a lot of time to go shop. So we need to go to our insurance carrier and ask them to quote us. Because that's simple. Boy, if we get it and have 30 days, we don't have time to shop.
So I would, if y'all will do that, I'd appreciate that, so. Anyway, now, the next item,
Mr. Mayor,
I'm sorry.
don't we have a broker that's doing that for us right now?
Yeah, but
And they are. And they're anticipating bringing us the results of that research in 2 weeks.
Yeah, they're gonna be bringing it, and they're gonna have to have a decision real quick in order to get everything lined up, in order to implement that April 1st, deadline. All right, I believe that's all that I have at this point, so I'll, entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss possible litigation and personnel issues.
So moved.
I have a motion, I have a second. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
We will not come back.
Those opposed? All members, did you vote for it or not? You voted not, did you?
Sorry,
What was your
about something.
I think everybody voted to go into executive session. I will say there is the possibility that we will come back out and have a vote. Okay? Can't tell you exactly how long it'll take. Hopefully it doesn't.
Good to see you again.
See you on the homeless
patchwork. I work on my home. I own a digital marketing consultant, so I do online marketing.
Okay, we're back in open session at this time, and we have had a discussion regarding the committee, the interim city management committee's recommendation that I will turn this over to the chairman, Mr. Grant of that committee, and let him discuss that matter.
Again, the interim city manager committee consisted of myself as chair, Councilman Russ, and Councilwoman McGrew. We met on 3 occasions and immediately adjourned an executive session to discuss personnel matters as they pertain to recommending an interim city manager. Based on our discussions and our search criteria, we determined and want to recommend that we name Councilman Cummings as acting city manager for the interim position until permanent city manager is selected, hopefully sooner rather than later. And our recommendations included that he be given full authority and this be made effective immediately. Our CFO, Nathan Ingram, has been serving as acting city manager, and we really appreciate his services and the job that he's done for us. We're also recommending that as acting city manager, Mr. Cummings would be compensated $10,000 a month, less his council pay during that time period. Our compensation was based on, recommendations were based on review of city managers of other cities of comparable sizes to Canton, and we determined an average annual salary for city managers of similar size of being $120,000. That's where we came up with the $10,000 a month. And we have full faith in our recommendation, and that's.
You're making a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we name Councilman Cummings as acting city manager effective immediately.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion or comments? If not, those in favor, with Mr. Cummings abstaining, I'm sure. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voted for the motion. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn for real.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Who made the motion to adjourn? You seconded it.
He took it as usual.
Who made the motion? Okay, Bill, you made the motion. Bill is gonna make the motion.
I make the motion to adjourn.
John seconds. Okay. Thank y'all.